So like when some people will say, oh, I've got like weaknesses to my outer sweep. No, you've just got small legs. Like, if you've got weaknesses to your outer sweep, put 3 inches on your legs. Lots and lots of times I see people say, I've got weak arms. I go onto their page, they don't have weak arms, they have weak everything. You do not have weaknesses in terms of specific body parts. All of you is weak.
Se você deseja consultoria de qualidade, vem para o time Music.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the education series, and today we're going to talk about setting up push-pull legs splits. Now, like I said in one of my Instagram posts or stories, that this is the split that I have personally used for the longest period of time in my bodybuilding endeavors. I feel like for me, this split suits me the best. And there are some particular reasons for that, and there are some reasons as to why I never moved on to split body part routines. And I want to again explain as to why that may or may not be beneficial for you. There's definitely still been some confusion in the comment section. I've still had people commenting thinking that my video about full body was that this is the only way, and it's super frustrating when I get those comments, because I'm like, wow, like how have you missed the mark that bad with what this content is trying to do? So we're going to initially reiterate, because I know there'll be people that will watch this video that haven't watched the others. We're going to reiterate just those key points. There is no best split. The best split is the one that suits you in the moment. Please, guys, if you have just jumped on this video, just watch at least some of the very first video we dropped. It will help you so much. It will help you understand how your training needs to change on a continuum, and that your split is not going to be the same as my split, etc, etc, etc. We did a whole video on it. This is the main thing I'm just trying to hammer home. It's if people can take any one message from this content, it's just to understand their own needs, because as soon as you start to master your own needs, your progress is going to be amazing. And like I said, we're going to get stuck into this video as to why I personally never moved on to a split routine, and why I stayed on push-pull legs as my main split. So let's say that you have done a year, 18 months full body, step forward a massive amount, and then you struggle to progress your lifts in the back end of the session, and the cumulative fatigue of those sessions as a whole was then becoming too much, so you decided to separate your sessions into upper lower. That's a very smart progression. Now, again, with your upper lower sessions, you're then finding that the accumulative fatigue of doing all of your upper work together is just getting too much. You've done your push work, and then you get to your pull work, and you're like, okay, I just feel like if I started a session with pull, now my back would start to move forward even faster. In the comment section, people were asking, should you rotate the start of push and pull in those sessions? And I believe no. I believe that pull will have a much longer longevity to being able to progress strength when it's done second, which means then that when pull needs to be done first, as in push-pull legs, nothing is done after it. Because trust me, if you get to the point in your training where pull is becoming hard to progress at the end of push, you will have zero chance of progressing push at the end of pull. So that's why I always advise push first through the whole longevity of the program, with pull work being done at the end of it. And then once that stalls, that's when you know it's time to move on to push-pull leg work. And that's where you get to come in, you get to do more volume on one body part or one system, so your push work or your pull work, and then you get no additional recovery demands for the rest of the day, in the sense that you're not then trying to recover from all of your upper body being trained. So all the food that you take in then starts to help repair and rebuild just the thing that you trained. And that makes a big step forward again, but only when you need it. Only when that additional day just to that body part is warranted, because that additional day, focus on that body part, comes at a cost, and that cost is less frequency. And we know that when you're a beginner, there is less need for volume per body part to bring about an adaptive response. So this is where people are trying to jump themselves forward through splits, and I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, because they miss out on the frequency that they have the advantage of being able to utilize. Like, if I knew that I could train my legs, or train any body part, every other day, and make, like we said, those 182 lots of stimulus over a year, it's nonsensical to miss that opportunity, because you're just slowing your own growth. And again, there were some comments in the comment section of people really confused at just the equivalent of 3.5 sets a week per body part. And I get it. Like, there's this huge misunderstanding about how much volume you need. The information on that is poor. But I also understand why the information on that is poor. And that's because it's based on people that don't train hard. So it's a pretty safe bet, right, that if you don't train hard, if I just tell you to do 10 sets a week on a body part, you're going to roughly get enough stimulus to grow. But equally, if I know that you train like an animal and you are able to take your sets all the way to failure, that in those final reps of that session, of that set, you are recruiting every bit of muscle fiber you can, and you're creating the largest amount of mechanical tension possible in the muscle. You do not need 10 sets, but we know that that's not real. I mean, when I've been in gyms, I could probably find 1 or 2 people in the whole place, if there was like 30, 40 people in there, that actually was taking sets all the way there. Some days would be none. So then with that in mind, when you're leaving that much in the tank, sure, you're going to need more work. You're going to accumulate those effective reps. You're going to then need more volume. So, like that, and again, there are outliers to this, in the sense that there are people that do train very, very, very hard and that can work at really high volumes. They exist. I've trained with them. Like Rob Taylor's one that jumps out at me, for example. Rob trains with really high volume, but he also trains really damn hard. He's a freak. They are there, but he's got one of the best physiques in the world. You don't have one of the best of the physiques in the world, and you're not Rob Taylor. Which means then that, do you need that level of volume? No, because if that was working for you, you'd look like Rob, but you don't. And that's why you're here on this video. But that's the point I'm trying to make. Those guys, Nick Walker, Ian, James, they're not watching this video trying to understand how to do their training, because they know how to train, but you are. So then you can't come back to me and say, oh, but so-and-so trains this way. Yeah, but you're not them, because they aren't looking for the answers like you are. They aren't lost. And that's the harsh reality of this situation. And that's why when people come back to me saying, well, what's about so-and-so? I straight away just want to shut it down in the sense, but that's not you, because you'd already be there. And you wouldn't be having this question in your head, do I train this way or do I train that way? So it's really important to understand your needs. Okay, but the biggest thing, there's been a few things that have jumped out in the comment section, but one of the biggest things is you must train hard to failure. You must. Do not leave reps in the tank. I tried an RER system for 7 or 8 months. I hugely regressed, hugely, to the point where I was picking up weights that were light for me and they started to feel heavy, just unracking them. And as soon as that happened, I remember getting into a session where I was able to RDL 4 plates for 20 reps. No problem. Like, literally, maybe even more than 20 at peak. I remember getting into a session, unracking 4 plates to do an RDL, and it feeling really, really, really heavy. And getting like 10 or 11 reps and just thinking, okay, fuck this training system. This is way off. And that's and the idea of adding more work at sub-maximal intensity is entirely nonsensical to me. It makes absolutely 0 sense. But hey, that's another whole discussion, and we'll do a video of that another time. So you've got to train hard, you've got to train to failure. You've got to understand your needs. And when we eventually come to a push-pull leg setup, how do we set this up? This video has turned off into a bit of a rant, which I'm sorry for. None of the rest of them have. I think it's because we've had a while now of lots of comments in the comment section, and then like I almost get frustrated because I'm so desperate to help, and I still feel how confused some people are, and like I just want to bang my head against the wall because I'm just like, how are we still missing this? And that's not to say that my way is the only way, because in the videos, that's the biggest message that I'm putting across, that there is no way. But the point is to understand, being able to gather all the information possible to then try everything out. And when there's some kind of resistance to that, it confuses the hell out of me. I literally can't wrap my head around it. To the point where there's been some comments in the comment section where I have to ask people why they're asking it, because I don't understand where their head's at to ask that question. But we're getting there. Like, this is all coming from a genuine place with me, guys. I want you to really make some damn good progress. So that's why there's a mini rant at the start of this one, which if you lot have survived through, then you're going to get to some decent information. And then if this video flops, a note to self, don't go on rants on YouTube videos. Right, push-pull legs. So how does this look in terms of the setup? There's two ways to do this, in my opinion. One way is just a straight push, pull, legs, rest. Or you, in terms of it being 3 days on, 1 day off. I personally didn't like that approach. You may love 3 days on, 1 day off. If that fits for you and you do not create too much fatigue across the 4 days in general before you then start the next 4 days, amazing, run with it. For me, that died within 2 lots of 4 days. I was battered. I could not train 3 days on a row with how hard I train. It was just impossible. But like I said, some of you may have the recovery capabilities to do it. It may be a reflection that just you're not quite there with your strength levels comparatively to how I am. But then again, I can name people that are just as strong as me and on something stronger that are able to train 3 days on. Like James did it in this whole prep for this whole season. Trained push, pull, legs. Yeah, 3 days on in that order. Completely fine. And that worked great for him. But like I said, for me, my preference was always push, pull, rest, legs, rest. So I'd have a rest day either side of legs. And I felt like that allowed me to make a huge amount of progress. Now, when we compare the two splits, obviously one comes at slightly higher frequency. Amazing. That's a big benefit. Like, in an ideal world, I would train it with 3 days on, 1 day off, if I could. And I tried it multiple times and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't recover from it. So again, that's the kind of thing of knowing what my options were, trying them, even wanting to be able to do it, because I know that it might be slightly more optimal with the increased frequency, but accepting the fact that my recovery demands didn't allow for it, and then training at a setup that was suitable to my needs. That's the key. I tried something, I decided it wasn't right, and I settled on something else that felt better. This is the constant thing that I need you guys to do. I need you to stop asking for permission to try things. You do not need anyone's fucking permission to do a certain exercise or do a certain amount of volume or do a setup. Like, why? Try it. Like only you will know how it feels. So then if it feels good to you, fuck anyone else. Their opinion is invalid. It's so important. It's such an important message. Like, if someone says to you, why are you doing that? Because it feels good. Fuck off. Okay? Like, I can't tell you how important that is. Because if someone turned around to me and I said, what for reason are you doing that? And they said, I tried every other way and this way just feels great. I'm like, hell yes. Epic answer. Legend. Not, well, so-and-so gave me permission to do that. Fuck that. I've never made a decision in that way in my life for anything. Come to your own decisions. Right, more mini rants. What's wrong with me today? Back on topic. So we have those two approaches and then come into our own decision which one we like the most. Now, a question is, how much work do we need in each one of those splits? Well, based on the fact that we have more sleeps between each training session, we know that we can expose ourselves to a little bit more work than what we were doing in just the upper sessions. So, and also obviously the lower sessions, but we'll start on the uppers. So that with the push work, we were previously then just doing a load and a back offset to the compound works, movements that we were doing in upper. Now we have scope for isolation work. We have scope for more specific work on areas that we feel need attention. And again, at this point, you should be able to understand your needs. If you've gone through your your full body work for 18 months and maybe another 18 months on upper, lower, you've exhausted them all, you've literally put a crazy amount of progress on all your lifts, you've put on 30 pounds of lean tissue over these 3 years, you could look at yourself and now, for the first time, actually, realistically be able to go, my shoulders and arms are developing a little bit faster than my chest, or my shoulders and arms are a little bit behind my chest. Until that point, I don't really see how people are able to make those decisions, because again, slight tangent, we'll try not to rant. Lots and lots of times I see people say, I've got weak arms. I go onto their page, they don't have weak arms, they have weak everything. You do not have weaknesses in terms of specific body parts. All of you is weak, which means you need to be focusing on your full body work and your upper body or your upper lower work based on whichever one is most suitable for you until you've gained 30 pounds of muscle, and then you're like, okay, now I have some weaknesses that are apparent and now I can address them. I don't feel like they needed addressing before because, like I said, all of you was weak and you didn't really have any muscle. Now you've got 30 pounds more muscle and now you look awesome, but now you need some more balance. If you tried to address the balance in the early stages, you wouldn't have gained 30 pounds of muscle and you'd still just have weaknesses everywhere. Okay? It's a big, big thing. And this blows new trainers' minds. They train for like 3 months and like, my arms are weak. Shut up. Your arms are not weak. Right? And again, myself and like all my peers in terms of experienced bodybuilders, we all share the same opinion on this. I think it's because we reach a decent level of muscle to then know, okay, that's weak, that's not weak. You can generally fix weaknesses as a whole as well, guys and girls, by just actually just getting big. So like when some people will say, oh, I've got like weaknesses to my outer sweep. No, you've got small legs. Like, if you've got weaknesses to your outer sweep, put 3 inches on your legs. It'll probably go away. If it still doesn't, and you still got kind of straight up and down legs, it's just kind of a genetic thing. Like, there's not really masses that you can do about it. You might be able to then start targeting things more to help bring up that area. But in the process of gaining 3 inches as a whole, if you didn't fix that area, it's probably not going to get fixed. But there are definitely things that we can do in terms of where you've noticed that your shoulders and arms might be over or underdeveloped compared to your chest. Then how much attention you put to your isolation movements in the push session, and also the order at which you do them. So this is going to give you things to think about. So if our chest stays super dominant and our shoulders and arms have lagged a little bit behind, do we then need to start with a push exercise? Sorry, a chest exercise? Possibly not. Possibly not. We could then maybe look at starting with a high incline press, or we could start looking at a dip as a start movement. Now these are just the things that I want you to consider now, what exercise comes first as a priority in the push session. Now, I'm still going to largely say that if you train that way coming through, that you're not going to have such vast imbalances that it's probably worth moving away from the chest exercise being first. It's probably going to be the case that you still are going to want to hit things in the order of chest first, shoulder second, triceps third, generally. But you might be someone that has really glaring imbalances, and again, that's where they'll then be addressed. If you refer back to the push session video that I uploaded, I talked about 2 different approaches, again now, into the structure itself of the session, in the sense that Do we clump together the compound movements and then finish with the isolation movements? Or would we do chest, then chest iso, shoulder, then shoulder iso, then triceps and tricep iso? Again, 2 different ways to do things. Decide which one you like the most. You do not need permission to do either. You have permission to try both, and you have permission to decide which one you like the most. Just because I know some of you will still need permission in some way. So there you go, permission granted to make your own decisions. Once you get, so this is what's then nice, in the sense that you have 2 options as to how you set up the push session. You also have 2 options in terms of the layout of the splits. This is where you're going to start to really understand your needs. And then you can also justify them. Couldn't recover from that, that way felt better. Great, nailed it. These are the important questions, guys. Because as you narrow down your needs more and more and more, you're going to find then a perfect training setup entirely for you. And again, it's about understanding all of your options, trying them, and really figuring out what feels good and what doesn't. Some of you are going to then have a really valid question is, I don't really know what feels good. And that's actually quite fair, because that's quite hard. It's something that, I mean, I've been lifting weights for 20 years, so 22 years now. It's kind of easy for me to understand what feels good and what doesn't. And also, I think I'm quite fortunate in the sense that when I started lifting weights, there wasn't even the internet, let alone social media. Well, there was the internet, but it was the one that dialed up and made funky noises when you were connecting to it. So that's not really the internet. And there certainly wasn't forums at that, when I was that age. So the only feedback I had was myself. That was it. So I remember I was talking to my dad about it last night, because I was 12 years old in the spare room, because remember he was talking about how he put the squat rack up for me, that I would do things and I would literally just have to reflect on it myself and think, how did that feel? Because you couldn't just do nothing, in the sense that you knew you wanted to build muscle, you knew that there was really no resources available to you, you knew that dudes that were really, really big were really strong. I worked that out straight away, because I was watching these massive guys, watching the weights that they were lifting, or seeing them in magazines, and then just immediately going, okay, even as a 12-year-old, he's got that muscle, he's lifting that much weight. I have to lift that much weight to get that much muscle. That was really simple in my head. So I then just had to think to myself, okay, as a 12-year-old, how do I get there? So then I finish a session and think, yeah, that felt pretty good. Or I'd do something and think, that felt terrible, I'm not going to do that next time. Because I don't have any resources elsewhere. I can't go and ask someone for permission. I can't find out the way anyone else is doing anything, because I don't know any other 12-year-olds that are lifting weights. So it's just me in my spare room on my own with my squat rack. So I think that definitely gave me an advantage in terms of the way that I view things, in that I am not going to ask anyone for permission. I'm going to feel things out, because I've been doing it for 22 years. You must do the same. You must do the same. And now you have all the resources available to you to understand the options you have. But equally, I understand that that also poses a huge amount of confusion, which is probably one of the biggest issues. So the social media aspect and the availability of content is both a good and a bad thing. But if we can work out the options available to us, try everything out, come to our own decisions on our needs, the amount of progress is going to be amazing. And I am so determined to get us there. So that's the focus on the push session. That's the focus on the layout, and that's the focus on the idea of when we move from upper lower to push pull legs. Now, I'm going to just move on to why I stuck on this split, and then we're going to wrap this video up, because this one's got loads of different things to unpack in it, and we're going to do separate videos for pull and legs, just because I've chucked out so many different things in this one, which I apologize for. This is the first video where I've gone a bit bonkers myself with the things that I'm talking about. I have no idea, no reason why. It's just, for those of you that are on the members site, you'll be used to this from me, because just some days this just happens. Because I don't plan my content, ever. I never have. It's just like I don't plan seminars, I just go up and start talking. So when I do these videos, all of a sudden, some days, I just go off on one, and this is one of those days. I try really hard not to, and in my head, for YouTube videos, I was like, don't do that, because it's probably not going to go down well. But it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. It's a topic I'm obsessed about, absolutely obsessed, and I have been since the age of 12. It's just been something that's consumed my brain for the whole of my kind of adolescent and adult life. So that's why I'm so keen to see people make progress in it, because to me it's a simple thing. I know it's not a simple thing, but to me it is. So that's why I'm like, right, I've got to get the stuff that I've worked out in 22 years into a video series on YouTube that's widely accessible, because I'm really confident that it can help a lot of people. Why did I stick on push-pull legs? So the idea then is that once maybe your shoulder or your tricep work, or then the rear delt or the bicep work isn't quite bringing the same amount of improvements in like the back ends of sessions, or even then maybe like the hamstring and the glute work, that's another great example, in the back of the leg sessions, isn't quite yielding the same responses because you have used up your energy and your focus in whatever you train in the early part of the session. So the exact same reason why you've moved on from full body, why you've moved on from upper lower, will be the same reason why you move on from push-pull legs. Because for that thing to grow, that bicep, that rear delt, that hamstring, you need to come in and just train it. It gets trained fresh, it gets all the attention and the love for the whole session, and then everything that you eat that day and your sleep all contributes towards the growth of that one thing. That's why people then eventually go to split part routines, because they are at that point where then that's the only way to make things progress more. And if you reach that and you then find that moving to split body parts works for you, amazing. And that's where most pro bodybuilders are at. It's ideal. And we can logically unpack the progression through it, and we can logically unpack why they need it, and we can also logically unpack why you don't need it, because you do not look like fucking Dexter Jackson, okay? If you do, you need to train like him, but you don't. You're watching this video, Dexter is not. Why I didn't move to it was because I found that for me, training 5 or 6 days on was entirely impossible. Just like I said, I couldn't train 3 days on. So that's going to be a big reason, because you're training at a level of strength and intensity that you simply cannot recover from on a daily basis. Now, that's not to say that some of those top pros don't train with strength and intensity. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And that's because they were born to do it. They were always going to be one of the best bodybuilders in the world, because they've got beautiful muscles that have a great propensity for growth. We don't. I definitely don't. I had to destroy myself for every ounce of muscle that I built. And sadly for you, a lot of you, it's going to be the same way. So when you have to train with that level of intensity, training 5 or 6 days a week is impossible, which means then to fit all the work in that you need in a week, you're only going to be allowed 4 days training, sometimes 5, but you're realistically going to need rest, which then means you have to cluster more body parts together in a session. That's just the way it is. You don't have any other choice. There's no other way around it. Otherwise, the frequency of your work becomes far too low. Because let's say we then train split body parts, where everything gets its attention, but you also need rest. We're then training things once every 10 days. That's too long. It's way too long. Trust me, I tried it, because I tried everything. I thought to myself, well, I know that coming in and just training that body part will give it more attention, more love, more recovery, more growth. So how about I do that, but I also then accommodate my recovery needs, so then I might train 2 days on, 1 day off with a split body part routine, and it means I train eventually then every body part once every 11 days or 10 days. No, regressed. I regressed versus push-pull legs training something every 5 days. Okay, so it's an easy decision for me. I tried it. I logically worked out an approach. It didn't work. Went back to the thing that felt good. So that's the reason why you might move to it, and equally that's the reason why it might not work. One thing that I overlooked in the previous videos that a lot of you highlighted, which is a very fair point, is that a lot of you have time constraints, which is totally valid. That's a very fair point. And for those of you that have time constraints and you can only do a 45-minute session, yeah, you might then just have to do split body part. That's just the way that is. And there's nothing that can be done about that. That's totally fine. Because if I only had 45 minutes to train, I would definitely train a split body part. Or I would at least combine 2 body parts together. I wouldn't train more than 2 body parts. And realistically, I'd probably just stick on one. I'd probably just do a chest day. And I'd just do an arm day, which I know is 2, but arm days are, you can bash out an arm day pretty quick. I would just train my back. I would just train my shoulders. That's valid for a 45-minute session. So when you're thinking to yourself, okay, what options are available to me? If time constraints is a limitation, that would definitely dictate your split. So hopefully this video has got across a lot of messages and gives you a lot to think about. And if you see other people writing silly comments in the comment section and you're on board with the video series, help me out. Don't bash them, that's not what I want at all. But just help me out and get on board with just directing people to maybe the other videos, or maybe answering them in the way that, with the knowledge that you've gained so far, and then I can chip in on top of it, and then it's more of a sharing of information, and that helps with clarity a lot. Because that's what I certainly want to encourage in the videos, is just us helping each other and making sure that everyone understands what we're trying to achieve from these videos. Because if we can get this to kind of spread, this idea of there is no best split, there are no must-do exercises, that you have permission to do anything that you want, and if something feels good, it feels good, fuck anyone else. That's perfect, and that's what we're going to try and do.